Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dan Saunders. I'm the product manager here at Basemap. So thank you much for your time in attending today's webinar, which is aimed at showing how TRACC can be utilised in local authorities and councils. We're going to be highlighting a few case studies of how existing client base are using the tool and getting some valuable outputs from that. So to start off with, we have various clients using TRACC in over 100 different authorities at the moment across different departments, and we kind of, from having feedback through support and chatting to our clients, we can see that many people are having the same type of issues, and the TRACC can answer the following questions. So the first and most used part of the application is in the planning department, so working out where you want to put new development locations for both employment and housing. So you can utilise the software to work out how public transport routes feed into that service at the moment or that area, or when there might be gaps within that network. So effectively you're evaluating how effective your existing network is, and when possible you can look at doing some SUDs to get funding from developers to help improve any kind of transport around that area as well, and it allows you to ensure that housing and employment are put in the correct locations. Also, environment is a big kind of usage at the moment in sustainability, and there's an overarching need to reduce car emissions. There's targets to reduce it by 2020 and 2030, and a lot of that is about modal shifts, so getting people out of their car to remove congestion from city centres. There's a recent fund announced in the local budget of how local authorities can apply to get that funding, and a big part of that is, as I said, getting people out of their cars onto other things, such as onto the bus network. So that's where TRACC can also come in and help. So TRACC can be used to work out where you might have gaps in your transportation network at the moment. If you've got some funded routes you might part fund or fully fund, you can work out, are they effective at the moment, and what happens if we were to maybe adjust them? Can we get more bang for our buck? Can we feed more people off the back of that? And also you can look at extending routes as well, not both in bus but in other networks as well. So you can look at extending a guided busway, for example, and working out where the most optimum location of that is. Or if you wanted to or needed to reduce the amount of subsidised services that you offer, you can model that within TRACC as well. So if we wanted to cut 15% of our bus routes, where can we do that and actually still offer the best level of accessibility for our residents as possible? So health and well-being is a really, really important thing, as I touched upon a moment ago. So active travel is seen as a real key driver to help both with our health at the moment. So if you can get people walking, people will be fitter and will be healthier. And also, if you can get people walking as well, you effectively are reducing the burden on your highways or your transportation network as well. Also, as part of the health there's a big study of how connecting communities can effectively help people promote a sense of well-being as well. So ensuring that you've got bike routes or cycle routes or walking routes or bus routes to allow these people to connect together. And part of that is social exclusion. You know, the people who are most in need often aren't able to drive, so you to ensure that you've got other ways of ensuring they're connected to society. And a bus network, for example, is a great way of doing that. And also on active travel as well, this starts feeding into education. So we have various education departments at the moment. At the first level, looking at where pupils might get access to a free school bus pass at the moment, or where you might want to start adjusting your bus routes or subsidised routes to get pupils at secondary school age into that location. Also, there's a need to encourage active travel as well. So looking at things like stride and ride, park and stride services where you can park and walk the final distance to stop. Again, the emissions around schools at pick-up time, again improving pupil safety by having less cars on the road as part of that. Also, it's very popular to look at the catchment process as well. So historically, lots of local authorities say if you live within more than 2 kilometres away from a school, you can get a free bus pass, but lots of them use a straight line approach as part of that, and that's not a very accurate way of doing things. So if you start looking at a straight line approach, here we've got a location in Southampton and showing what 1 mile in this example looks like from that site. We can see quite a large areas being covered with 42 and a bit thousand people within that catchment. Now what you can see, if you're very eagle-eyed, you can also see there's a river running right through the middle of that. So effectively that 42,000, that 1 mile is allowing people to act like Jesus and walk across water which obviously isn't giving you a very accurate representation of distance. So this is where tools like TRACC can come in. So TRACC is a very, very easy to use multimodal travel time assessment tool. So it allows you to look at public transport, car, cycling and walking assessments. And where it kind of really comes into its own is it allows you to do the what if scenario. So what if we put a brand new road in or a new footpath in? Or what if we remove a road or a footpath because we know there's been lots of accidents there, so it's not a safe walking route for someone to utilise. And the same for public transport. What if we make this bus from 4 buses an hour to 2 buses an hour, or add or remove the service? You can do all of that within TRACC. And then the great thing is you have various ways in which you can output the results. So you can produce a very pretty contour, like in the bottom left, which is showing travel time as a very good visual representation. You can then overlay the actual walking routes of where people are going. So here we can see there's various colours. You can see people's exact walking routes to get to a school location. We can produce a catchment map that you can see on the right-hand side showing if you live in this location here, this is the closest school or the closest site for me to get to. As well as that, we've got very detailed reports or matrix files that you can, if you wanted to, get under the hood and start analysing thousands upon thousands of travel times or travel distances and putting them into other products like SQL or building products on the top of them if required. So when we use all this stuff with TRACC and using all the lovely free data that you get, such as footpath data from Ordnance Survey, you can then see what actually a mile actually looks like. So here we can see that a mile is now covered by the blue area, representing that just over 15,000 people, so about a third that were covered by the straight line distance. And then now you can see the natural barrier of the River Itchen kicking in, stopping people able to walk across these natural barriers at the moment. And then if you really wanted to, you could put a new footbridge in. So here we've got a footbridge across the River Itchen showing how that 1 mile distance now goes across towards Itchen. And then you can see that then is represented by an increase of 3,000 or 4,000 more people able to access the site. And this starts giving you an evidence base using detailed demographic data, either using the census or using things like CACI data or Experian data to really kind of help give further evidence of the effectiveness of a new scheme. So all these type of issues are the same sort of things that Stafford has. So they had an issue that they wanted to or needed to put new residential employment sites in Staffordshire, as most councils do at the moment. We always hear, especially where we're located in the southeast, that we need more housing, everyone wants more housing, but you need to make sure you put that housing in the right spot, and that's exactly what Staffordshire needed to do. And doing that, they needed to support their local development plan, so they've got a plan of where they want it to go and where housing is meant to go, but they need to ensure that they had an evidence base that helped to support that, utilising all the tools and services available to them. So there's some very, very accurate data out there by Ordnance Survey or Travel Line giving walking and footpath information that they wanted to utilise to allow them to very accurately represent travel time by walking, cycling and public transport. What they also wanted then to do is analyse not just where you could get to, but how long did it take to get to them essential services. So the essential service being the local doctors or the local school, primary, secondary, college, supermarket and hospitals. So they basically analysed both walking, cycling and public transport times where they wanted to all of these sites. And also, as Staffordshire is quite a mix of urban and rural areas, they wanted to ensure that they could tailor a solution to say that actually in an urban area, someone's probably likely to walk a much less distance than if they're more rurally located. So they then decided that they'd been using TRACC, and TRACC was the perfect tool for them. They've been using it previously, and they decided to then bring this on board and start producing various analysis to help provide this evidence base. So they wanted to show travel times to each of them sites that I talked about a moment ago. So we can see a very colourful map here showing travel time in 10-minute bands, so grey being 10 minutes up to red being a 60-minute journey time with some various greens and yellows in between. And then they overlaid on top of that where their proposed sites are. So we've got an employment site and residential sites. And then we can see, looking at the legend at the top, we can see that actually looking at public transport access on a Wednesday between 8 and 10, because they've got that timetable data and TRACC they can cherry pick when they want to look at, to hospitals using both the bus and rail networks. It's very, very important that looking at destination type, they could vary the time and days of access. And also because they're looking in both the rural and urban areas, footpath data is very, very important. So loading in the IT and urban path data, supplemented their footpath network, allowing people to accurately walk between bus stops and to their final site as well. And then when looking at access to that bus stop, they can limit it. So in urban areas, they could do 350 metres using that footpath data and 800 metres in the more rural area of Newcastle under Lyme, allowing them to get two different results they could easily review both in that urban and rural areas. It also allows them to make any changes to the network when needed as well. So they could, for a new site, they could work out where the access points are, draw in new footpaths as part of that. And also, if areas were outside of, say, 400 metres to a bus stop, what they were able to do is then start looking at changes that could be made as part of that to help support the local development plan. And here again, just before I go on, you can then see another map, this time showing access on a Saturday between 10 AM and 1 PM to supermarkets, again using bus and rail. But in this more rural area, you can see a much less area is covered by the 16-minute travel time console, this time yellow being quick journey times and purple being the 16-minute journey times. And in these rural areas, it's really important then to start making sure you've got the right public transport services there. So again, they were able to put in new stops, new services, divert existing services to help feed these sites to give a really robust evidence base that they could then hand on to someone else to say, right, as a developer, we want to get this funding from you to help support this bus service for 3 or 5 years, and also making sure that after that funding finished, that actually the stops and services are located in the best place, allowing them or giving them the best chance to be fully fledged in their own right going forwards. And this is why ensuring that, you know, all of this kind of tying together to ensure that as a housing site, it's sustainable both now and in the future as well. On a side note as well, Staffordshire, when looking at these development sites, they worked out that actually they could potentially put some new walking and cycling bridges in as well, and actually went to a local sustainable transport fund and won, I think, £4 or £5 million off the back of analysis done in TRACC to build that new footbridge over Rowan Island. We've got a great case study about that buried somewhere on our site. Let's just have a look at. So here we've got a great quote, and as we can say here, have a quick read through on the sustainability. We've got a few more maps on the site. Let's just have a look on the link at the bottom. And that's just to pick out here, the thing they found most important was being able to bring in that urban path data from Ordnance Survey. And actually the process of doing that is very, very simple within TRACC, and that's something they really quite liked compared to other solutions. So then also what happened as well in Staffordshire is they started getting some good kind of work of doing this. They found other ways in which they could use the software as well. So the school travel team went to a conference called Mode Shift Stars, and they have basically a need to reduce congestion around schools at peak time, and also to encourage active travel for that as well. And they went to this conference and they saw some lovely walking maps that had been produced, but unfortunately when they started speaking to the supplier, each map was going to cost £400 to produce, and there's hundreds of schools within Staffordshire, so very, very quickly the expense of it would have been tens of thousands of pounds. So they went back and they asked internally, has anyone got the ability to produce a walking map showing 5 or 10 minutes away from a school? And very, very luckily, the team that had produced the work for development put their hands up and said, yes, we've got a tool called TRACC and we can do this for you. And basically what they then worked out is by using TRACC that actually they could very easily and very quickly produce these maps as well. So there's no kind of time constraints. Within 5 or 10 minutes, a map could be produced and outputted as well, as they set up a template as part of it. So here's an example of one of the maps that was used for Moorgate Primary Academy, showing where a 10-minute walking zone is around from that. And the view of that was to get people, if they lived within that, to walk there. And if people were to drive in, they could drop off on the outskirts of that and walk that final 10 minutes to the school location. Again, using the accurate urban path data that was provided. So they then looked and expanded it out. So they produced a customized map for every school, showing the school location, showing 10-minute walking zones for primary schools. And they looked at secondary schools and looked at doing a 30-minute walking zone of that. And the great thing about it is they also then start promoting, as you can see here on the back, the benefits of walking and what the benefits do for the health, of reducing that congestion, so there's no more emissions around the school location as part of that. And the really important thing for them was to get people changing their habits within the first 2 weeks. So they included all of this in all the new starter packs, all the transition packs for new pupils as well. And their view was that if you can get someone within the first 2 weeks to stick to walking or sustainable transport modes, that would follow them through the whole of their education and adult life as well. A really important thing to kind of get that kind of modal shift into their minds from a young age. And because of that, it was really well received by both head teachers, parents and pupils. And where the real kind of benefit of this is they could actually measure a 27% increase in active travel, which is a really, really kind of a hard thing, but a really good thing that they can then go and show for other types of services as well. And again, that's highlighted here on the case study by Sue at Staffordshire. As I said before, I think it's really good to get people working this way, and as we grow, I think active travel this way is probably the best way of doing things. So our next case study is looking at Gloucestershire, and this is a slightly different take on things. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to find out areas within Gloucestershire that were within a 45-minute public transport commute to essential services. So as more things are becoming digital, they wanted to make sure that people could access services within a 45-minute public transport commute at the moment. And people who are outside of the commute, they wanted to evaluate, actually, can they get to an internet station? And they decided that a really good point for an internet station was a library. So they started looking at commuting to libraries as well as part of that. And part of it was effectively to get the whole of Gloucestershire connected to council services and to remove the kind of pressure on frontline staff there. So they explored basically existing bus routes and existing access for that, and looked at the options of extending and removing these services as well to basically get the best bang for their buck of public transport. So all that effectively allows you to do within TRACC is you can then view all the services that feed in around your area at the moment, who the operators are. You can then drill into one of your routes if in particular, and all these can be edited, so you can start suspending operators you might not want to utilize anymore, or you can edit the route to drag and drop and change the order of stops to add new stops as part of that. And you can do the same on the timetable as well, as you can see the full timetable, and you can see which days it operates, and you can then adjust that to change the frequency, reduce the frequency, increase trip times during peak times if required as well. And that's exactly what Gloucestershire started doing. So an example here is showing all the differences of removing an operator from the thing. So we can see a drop in access on the contours in Cardiff to the west of the map. And it gives you that really quick visual evidence that you can then go ahead and make decisions off the back of. And this example, we're removing this operator, you could then look at demand responsive transport services to feed in any gaps into the network. So in Gloucestershire's example, that's what they did. They had a real edit of their data. They started working out the best way in which they could access their public transport network at the moment. They then supplemented it with some customer data from CACI, effectively then showing segmentation of people that were outside of that area, even after the improvements were made to public transport. And the best thing they did then is then led a marketing campaign, and that marketing campaign then targeted people who are outside of their 45 minutes away, that they could then access the internet at their local library, or they can go and get this information elsewhere to help people claim for benefits and things like that as well. And again, this feeds back into tackling social exclusion. So libraries was also seen as a good place to have as a social hub, so ensuring that people can effectively use that to get to their location. And Gloucestershire really kind of ran with this, and as we can see here, as a kind of a statement from Dermot of how useful it was. Again, we've got a great case on our website at the bottom, but effectively saying how great it was and to allowing residents to basically apply for things like universal credit off the back of things. And then from this as well, they decided, well, actually, let's not just look at libraries, let's build a whole portal showing travel time. So here we've got a series of maps that you can go onto on their website called Inform Gloucestershire, showing travel time maps to A&Es, secondary schools, primary schools, post offices, and also looking at drive time maps, which you can do in TRACC as well, to GP surgeries, libraries, and everything like that. Let's just go have a look at that. They've got some great maps on there that shows all different ways in which TRACC can be utilised for them. So that kind of gives a bit of a flavour of how councils can make the use out of our TRACC software. We've got lots and lots of great case studies on our website. I suggest you connect with us in any one of these ways. If you ever want a copy of this presentation to show other people, please drop us an email at the address at the top. And also what you can do is connect with us on social media and all these other ways as well. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.